And peace be upon all of you. My name is Amina Ishaq, and I'm on the board of Minaret Foundation. Minaret Foundation's focus is to lift American Muslim voices for sustainable change through multi-faith and civic engagement. Joining us today is Eric Fagan, running for Fort Bend County Sheriff as part of our candidate Q&A series, where we interview candidates running for office and learn more about their stance on issues concerning not only the Muslim community, but the multi-faith community at large. So welcome, Eric. It's so nice to see you here.
Thank you, Amna, and thank the Minaret Foundation for having me here today. I feel very honored to be here.
Okay, we're so happy to be here, for you to be here as well. So I'm just going to jump right in, and I want to ask you, can you give us kind of your broad stroke of your platform? Let us know a little more about why you're running and what you're going to do for Fort Bend County.
Well, I'm running to be the next Fort Bend County Sheriff because I want to bring 21st century policing to Fort Bend. We got to bring Fort Bend into the 21st century. Currently, we have a sheriff who's in office who says that there's no human trafficking in Fort Bend, that there's no gang problem in Fort Bend. To make statements like that, it gives a signal to people who are committing these type of crimes that Fort Bend is an open season for this. Now, don't misunderstand me. Fort Bend County is one of the safest counties in the nation, but we want to keep it that way. We want to work along with our DA, with our county judge, and with our other constables and law enforcement agency, bridging the gap with the community, our very diverse community.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate it. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. It's just a slight delay.
Okay.
Just a slight delay.
Okay. Well, you know, we have some topics that we want to talk about and just kind of get your stance on these topics. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the school to prison pipeline. So children, specifically children of color, have fallen victim to unequal policing and disciplinary policies in schools. And recently, another candidate that we had, the Harris County DA, Kim Ogg, said that she would only accept specific types of crimes for prosecution concerning juveniles and offenses in school. So this reduced the intake from 5,000 to 2,500 cases in Harris County. What is one concrete step or policy that you would take to combat the school to prison pipeline?
First of all, you have to have a sheriff in office that recognizes that there is a school to prison pipeline. We have to recognize that, and I do. And another thing, have a sheriff that will put policies in place that prohibit our deputies from arresting school-age students. Look, it's quite obvious that children of color are being treated differently in our schools than others. They are going to jail for little things like truancy. Something that you can give a ticket to, but if you go over and over again, they put them into the pipeline of prison. Arresting somebody for truancy? No, we will no longer be doing that in Fort Bend County at the sheriff's office if I'm the sheriff. Another thing, we will not handcuff students at a school. There's other ways to de-escalate an incident without handcuffing a student and arresting them. Kim Ogg is right. DA Kim Ogg is right. And also our DA here in Fort Bend County, Brian Middleton, a progressive DA. They need progressive sheriffs who agrees with them for not arresting school-age students. Look, Kim Ogg and Brian Middleton can't stop the arrest. They can't do it. But I can as sheriff by making policies known to my deputies that we will no longer do this. And if one of my deputies does arrest a student, it better be for a felony, not a misdemeanor case, a felony, something that is life-threatening. Other than that, that is something that can be dealt with administratively. Look, not only is it a school to prison, but it stops kids, people of color, from getting into colleges and universities. We have to stop that.
Thank you for that, Eric. And I want to add on to that, yes, handcuffing students at such a young age can have detrimental effects on their mental health. I am a licensed social worker, and
Yeah.
I've worked as a probation officer, so as a juvenile probation officer in the juvenile justice system. And I think it's very important for any sheriff of ours to know that the prison, for a child to be handcuffed can have detrimental effects, not just now, but later on in life. And it's a trauma that can last them a lifetime. But so
it can scar mentally. My background in forensic psychology, juvenile forensic psychology, taught little like that. It's like PTSD to a military person. That can scar a kid for a long time and make them feel threatened by law enforcement officers when they get older. We have to change that. We have to let them know that we're there to help them, not to run away from us, but someone there to help them. But we have to stop handcuffing our children. So that's something I won't tolerate.
Okay. So that was one policy or concrete step that you told us. And I think that everybody out there listening can understand what you're talking about. And I appreciate that. So let's go into law and order. We hear a lot about law and order lately. And we know that gang violence is on the rise with youth in the greater Houston area. And many believe that gang violence is inevitable. But there is another point of view. There is documented evidence that in many communities, gangs are the best way to ensure safety and can be the only opportunity for the future for some kids. So how would you use your position to ensure that young people feel safe and have opportunities other than gangs?
Well, one of my initiatives in my 7-point plan is the youth initiative. What I want to do is work along with the school districts. And to do that, I want to put a deputy there at the schools. Now, I'm not saying station a deputy there. I'm talking about doing something like this. During an 8-hour shift of my deputies patrolling on day shift, during the 8-hour shift, stop at a school, park their car at the school, get out of their vehicle and walk the campus for 5 to 10 minutes. Also, I want to work with the schools to put lock boxes inside the schools where students can drop anonymous notes into that box, and the person that has the key to that box are the deputies and law enforcement officers. Look, they feel safe and threatened by gangs, and I know that sounds contradictory. The reason I say safe and threatened by them is that other gangs, they said if you don't join my gang, the other gang is going to attack you. Well, we have to give them another option. By us being there at the school and them dropping in an anonymous note, we can find out who the gang members are. We can go to them. And remember what I said before. I'm going to those other students as students, not as criminals. Some people who are joining gangs, they are sometimes mentally scarred by law enforcement and scared. But we can do it in different ways. We can talk to them. Do you remember the old DARE program? Well, I want to do something like that. Not bringing back DARE, but do something like that. Making kids feel like officers are their friends. So if we're there every day, I'm just saying 5 to 10 minutes out of your 8-hour shift, stop by a middle school, stop by a high school, get out your car and walk around. The kids will get more comfortable seeing us and interacting with us.
Yes, that's true. That's very true. Engaging and building that rapport with youth, especially having that good experience with another like a sheriff or a deputy, will, for mental health, would be great for our kids, especially in schools. So yes, I agree with you on that. But we do. You mentioned the DARE program. I grew up on the DARE program, so I don't know the efficacy of it. But having programs such as that, something like that, maybe something revolving around building trust between law enforcement and youth would go a long way.
Guess what? I was a DARE instructor. from
Oh,
elementary to high school. I was a their instructor. So I saw the potential it did. It made kids, look, you're an adult now. You have a
yeah,
positive view of an officer that taught you there. We need to
yeah.
bring that back to bridge the gap. We have to bring it back.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk about police reform. We all know that police reform it's a hot topic right now. Everybody's talking about it in the media, and there's just a lot of stuff going on with police brutality, and just there's just so much going on right now in our country that we need to heal. And there's we had an interview with Chief Acevedo as well, and other police chiefs who have gone on record to say that they believe that if an officer is fired from one precinct, they should not be allowed to be rehired. So in Texas, a police officer has to be fired twice before they are unable to be rehired. Would you agree with Chief Acevedo and other police chiefs that officers should not be allowed to be rehired once they have been fired?
Yes. What is called is a gypsy cop. I worked as a background investigator for the Houston Police Department. I traveled the country doing background investigations on officers trying to apply with the Houston Police Department. What we have to do is this: having the knowledge of background investigation, if an officer was to apply with my agency as the sheriff and they wouldn't sign the waiver for us to do a complete background to that other agency, I know that there's a problem, and I won't hire that officer. Also, another thing is this: we have to work with the other agencies and share our information. People have to realize a law enforcement officer is someone who carries to take away a person's freedom. You don't want the wrong person to have that type of power. And you can't let one officer jump from one agency to another agency to another agency. That's a red flag. That's something we have to shut down, not only in police agency, but get legislation that states that because some agencies will still do it. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. Some agencies will do it just to have a body there, a number count. Well, that body can do something wrong like he did with George Floyd.
Yeah.
So it can't be about that. It has to be about the safety of the community. So we have to put in legislation that mandates that chiefs of police, constables, and sheriffs are not allowed to hire people with checkered background from one agency to another.
Yeah. Okay, and I know that's very important to the country. And another thing that has become very mainstream, like I was mentioning before, conversation regarding race and policing, right? Like you just mentioned George
Yes.
Floyd, and that's something that hits a lot of people in their heart, right? Especially with what's going on around this country. And how would you educate police officers to avoid racial insensitivity and bias? Because there's that distrust amongst African American and Black people and law enforcement, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not only the African American community, it's also the South Asian community, Hispanic community. When it comes to the minority, people of color, there's a distrust there. And we in law enforcement have to own up to it. The distrust came from us, from incidents that happened with George Floyd, Bailey, even all the way back to Trayvon Martin, little things like that. We have to own up to it, and we have to change it. And the only way to change it is, look, I'm running for office, that's true. But the only way to change it is to put people in office who understands what racial profiling is, who understands what it's like to be stopped for doing nothing just because you look different from someone else. So we have to have training, not only just 40 hours of training, but training and also policies put in place that says there will be zero tolerance for racial profiling, zero tolerance for any kind of differential treatment from one person to another. Look, if you pull over someone who looks like me and you write them a ticket for going 56 miles an hour in a 55 miles an hour zone, but someone else who doesn't look like us, they never get a ticket like that. Well, I will see that and I'll know, wait a minute, you're just doing this to this group of people? There'll be zero tolerance for that. Right now, we have something like that going on right here in Fort Bend right now with our this traffic task force that's going on. There's been a big thing about people of color being pulled over just because they look, the skin tone is different, and being pulled over thinking they're drug runners or things like that. That's racial profiling. We have to stop that.
Yes. And also, I recently read about Houston County, I think it was in the Houston Chronicle, about Hispanic men and Hispanics being stopped in Fort Bend County. Actually, I think it was over 100 stops that were Hispanic men.
Yes.
And there was, and mostly for just, it was racial profiling for no reason at all. So these are things that are happening to people of color. But I don't want to, honestly, as a Muslim American, I don't fear the police that my Black brother or sister would. So I think it's important for us to recognize that there is, even within communities of color, there is racial disparity amongst law enforcement and their relationship with law enforcement, because my relationship with law enforcement may be very different than my Black sister or brother. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
And that's true. The statistics shows is more like in Fort Bend County. There's statistics that show people of color, darker people of color, you just have to be truthful about it, are 7 times more likely to get a traffic ticket and to be stopped. These are not something that we're just saying, and you even said these are statistics. A study has been shown, but it starts from the top. And that's why we have to stop it. You need a person who understands that to be stopped. Look, I was stopped one time in Fort Bend County by a law enforcement agency who pulled me over. And the first question the officer asked me was, "Is this your vehicle?" If I would have called in and complained about that, they would have said, he would just want to know if that was your vehicle. But I understood that differently. Being a man of color, I couldn't own this vehicle. Is something wrong with me driving this vehicle? And I asked him, "Why did you stop?" He gave me a thing that I changed lanes, not in safety. I'm like, really? Really? Is that your probable cause? When I made that statement, he knew I was in law enforcement in some type of way. And I said, you stopped me just to ask me, your first words was this my vehicle? So that's racial profiling. Someone like me, who's not like me or not like you, they wouldn't understand it. They wouldn't see that as a question to take offense to. I understand it. You would understand it.
Yes, definitely. And I've had those experiences in Fort Bend County as well. Law enforcement have asked me, "Do you speak English?" And I know that's racial profiling. So let's move on. Yes, let's move on. But I'm going to move on. I think we've kind of discussed this, and I think that this is a sensitive issue for police reform. Is a very sensitive issue to lots of people right now. And you are running for Fort Bend County Sheriff, so our community needs to hear this from any candidate that's running for sheriff or any law enforcement position, that they understand that racial sensitivity is very important to this community. So let's move on to Islamophobia. So in recent history, Congress people have shared worrisome posts regarding Muslim Americans. Recently, self-proclaimed Islamophobe Laura Loomer, who won the GOP nomination in Florida, she and her hateful rhetoric surrounding Muslims is terrifying for all, not just Muslims, but for all people. But nonetheless, she was successful, right? And, we know that injustice to any people is injustice to all people. So her hateful rhetoric has concerned the Muslim community, and it should concern all people. So what would your first step be to combat Islamophobic and any type of rhetoric of hate?
What we have to do is to show that we have more in common than we don't than uncommon. Look, I'm a Christian. My faith teaches me to reach out to others, to help the needy, and to help the hungry, to help them feed them. The Muslim faith teaches the same tenets, to help the needy, to reach out to one another, to love their brothers. The, the Muslim faith has the same. I believe that there's one God. The Muslim faith believes that there's one God. We have more in common than we do differences. Muslim faith teaches love for your brothers and sisters. My Christian faith teaches love for brothers and sisters of the same faith. Not only the Muslim and Christian, the Hindu, the Catholic faith. We all have things in common. So we have to bring it together to show what we have more in common than what we have differently. Look, just because someone wears a mask across their face and the beautiful hip garment to on doesn't make them a danger, doesn't make them any different than anyone else. But you have people on the other side who try to create fear mongering. We had a president that wanted to put a Muslim ban. I couldn't believe that, a Muslim ban. So not against a country, he said it against a religion, a Muslim ban. You have to stand up against that. That has nothing to do with being Republican or Democrat. That has to do with being a human being, love for one another. So we have to treat each other as that, and we have to stand up, even if it's against our own party who preaches any type of racial discrimination, Republican or Democrat. I'm proud to be a Democrat, and I know Republicans who feel the same way I do about racial disparity. But I do also know that majority of the disparity is not coming from our side. Let's be truthful. It's not coming from our side. It's coming from the other side. And don't be fooled, ladies and gentlemen, who's watching this. Now they're trying to act like they're the progressive and want to do everything about change and things like that. But they never said one thing when he came out with that Muslim ban. They never said one thing when they elected that person in Florida. We stood up and said something. And now they're trying to be silent and say, oh, no, we're progressive. We're against all of this. But you won't stand up against your own president. You won't stand up against your own congressmen who make, or senators who make statements. You won't come out publicly and say something against them. I will. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or independent. If you make a racist statement, I'm going to stand against you. I will stand with the group, our people, all people.
Yes, and that's what's important for all people. It does not matter about partisan politics. This is something that we need to stand for as a community, whether you're Republican or Democrat. And that's what we do here at Minaret Foundation. We want all voices to be heard, and we want people to speak up against Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, all types of racism and bigotry. So if you are elected, this is a question I may be throwing this in, but we were talking about Islamophobia. So, I was just mentioning to Sharik as well, representation matters. And, people like to see themselves in law enforcement, just like as a Black child would love to see a law enforcement officer that is Black, or a Hispanic child that would love to see, they want to see themselves in these fields, right? Yeah. Would you hire more Muslim deputies in Fort Bend County if you became the Fort Bend County sheriff? Because I know that kids need to see this. Kids need to see all people of color, all people, whether you're white, Black, Hispanic, Muslim, Christian, they need to see themselves in somebody. And we know that psychologically, I'm a therapist, right? So psychologically, this stuff matters. So would you hire more deputies of the Muslim faith, the Hindu faith, the Sikh faith?
Not only hire deputies, you have to go further than that.
Yeah.
You need
leadership
to put people that faith in administrative offices, in the administration. Currently at the sheriff department, look, Fort Bend County is the most diverse county in Texas, if not also in the nation. And to have a command staff that doesn't reflect that, to me is shameful. I want a command staff that reflects that. Not only in patrol, but in the command staff. Kids need to see people who look like them and who have the same faith as them in these type of positions. Now, understand me. I want to put qualified, and I will put qualified people on my command staff. I will have a chart to be on my command staff. You will have to have at least a bachelor's degree, some type of college degree. Why? Because statistics shows persons who went to college, who got a higher education, more to be have more diversity training, interact with different people of different cultures and races. But if you hire someone who only has a high school education, I'm not knocking it, I'm just telling you what the statistics and facts state, then they have a monolithic view of the world, because they're in one culture and going to one school. They see the same people, go home to the same group of people, the same mindset. But if they go institutions of higher learning, we know that they had a mixture, some type of mixture. So I know in Fort Bend County, it won't be a struggle to find a qualified Muslim, a qualified Hindu, a qualified Catholic to be in these type of positions, not only in patrol, but I need them in command position as well. But to answer your question, yes, I will be hiring them in patrol, but I think it's more important to have them in command positions as well. Because psychologically, as you said, it will show, because look, I'll be the sheriff. I can't go to every event, but I can send people to different events to represent me. And why not send somebody to a mosque who is a Muslim, or to a Hindu, to a temple, or things like that from my office, that shows them that I'm a part of this community. I'm from you, I'm one of you, and I understand what's going on. And they can bring it back to me and let me know what's going on. I'm not gonna stand here and say, I understand the Muslim religion as well as you do. That would be ludicrous for me to say that. But if I hire someone from that religion, they can explain to me what's going on. Why is this offensive to their culture? Why we need to do a different way to reach the community, how to reach them in a different way. We have to be open to do these type of things. So that is something I'm going to do, will do, and looking forward for people like you to help me to have it come to fruition.
Yes. So, we were talking about a multi-faith. If you were elected as Fort Bend County Sheriff, would you be willing to make a multi-faith group or multi-faith coalition with your department to reach out to people of different faith, of volunteers, of citizens in our community, and work with organizations like different nonprofit organizations that could bring that multi-faith aspect to the sheriff's department? Would you be willing to do that?
Oh, definitely, definitely. In my citizen, on my 7-point plan, if you saw it, you see it at the number 7 is a citizen review board. That would be people made up of Fort Bend County of different faith, religions, and also different parties, Democrat, Republicans as well. We have to have a mixture. But that, what you just spoke of, the multi-religion, that would be something awesome, where I can sit down with these leaders of faith and sit down and talk to them. Why that's important? Because of this. They're there at the temples, at the mosques, at the churches, the churches talking to the people, and they go to their pastors and the synod to talk to them and let them know what problems are going on. Maybe they'll be uncomfortable to speak to me, but they'll be more comfortable speaking to them. But then they could tell me what's going on. That's something I would love to do. I will be a part of it. I know the DA Ogg in Harris County is doing it. Brian Middleton is looking into it, is doing it as well. And as your next sheriff, Lord willing, as your next sheriff, I definitely will be participating in that venture.
Okay. So yeah, I know we had talked about race and police reform, but this past presidential debate, there was a serious question asked to our president And I believe this question is very telling about the state of our nation. The moderator asked President Trump whether he was willing to condemn white supremacy, because white supremacy is such a serious issue in our current day and age. I personally want to condemn it, and I will do the same every day as a therapist, as a board member of Minaret Foundation, as a citizen of Fort Bend County. I condemn white supremacy. Would you stand with the Muslim and the wider multi-faith community against the evils of white supremacy?
Yes, yes. And I was so embarrassed that our president said that he would tell them, I hope people saw that, he would tell them to stand down, but to stand by. What kind of statement is that? Stand down, but to stand by? We will have zero tolerance for white supremacy in Fort Bend County as if I'm the sheriff. It would be zero tolerance for that. You have to have a person at the top that states that. If our president doesn't do it, we'll do it. Look, people have to realize local elections affects you way more than what the national does. But I will, as you said, I will have zero tolerance for this type of mindset. It is so backwards. I was just embarrassed that the president of our country would say something like that. That is an embarrassment. It's shameful. And I hope people are watching and understand what a dog whistle is. That was a dog whistle. Stand by.
So if you become the Fort Bend County Sheriff, would you like, if you found that one of your deputies was sharing anything on social media or showed any type of supremacist ideology, what would you do in that? Would that be grounds for firing, or what would you do in that situation?
When I become sheriff, Lord willing, put policies in place that has zero tolerance. Or zero tolerance that. If you put something on, and look, I'm not talking about taking anyone's freedom of speech away. They have the right to have freedom of speech. But placing something on Facebook as a law enforcement officer, you are employed as a law enforcement officer, and placing it on Facebook, that takes away from the First Amendment right, because now you're putting out there that you're against another culture or race, and then you will practice that in your law enforcement. So if you do that, I will have the right to terminate you, and I will terminate you. Look, I'm not going to lie to everyone. Just because I'm sheriff, if Lord willing, I can't stop racism in my department. There will be racists on my department, but I can put policies in place that would make it so hard for them to practice that. And if they do practice it, they will be terminated, that it would keep it down and it would be almost non-existent. But what's in their hearts, I can't change it. I cannot change it, and I won't and say I would, but I can put policies in place where it would make it almost impossible for them to practice it.
Yes, and that's what's needed, I think, and we would expect that of any sheriff that is elected for Fort Bend County. So one last question, and then we'll wrap this all up. But how does your faith or your spirituality, you said that you were a Christian, how does that drive your decision making?
It drives everything that I do in my decision making. I've been a Christian all my life. I came to faith of Christ as a small child because my mother, I have to admit, forced me to go to church, and it was driven in me. My faith says that I should treat everyone fairly and justly. To do anything else is against my faith. I said on this campaign trail that I'm a Christian. I don't need to tear anyone down to build myself up. And I won't do that because I am a Christian. And I believe that. My fraternity that I joined, Phi Beta Sigma, the reason I joined it because of this motto: culture for service and service for humanity. That's one of the biggest tenets in my faith. My faith in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. He washed his disciples' feet. He washed their feet, being a servant to them. So that's the greatest thing to be, is to be a servant to the people. So that's something that I believe in. That's something I would practice every day of my life. I would practice that as the sheriff of the department. Being a Christian or being a Muslim doesn't make you weak, doesn't make you against law enforcement or soft on crime. To be truthful with you, it's the exact opposite. Because we care about the people, we want to protect them. We want to take the criminals off the street who's causing harm and distrust, harm and danger to the public. But we also want to protect the victims and the citizens from discrimination and from bigotry. So it's greater. It's something that's it's greater and help me to do my job well. I can work with a Muslim. I can work with a Hindu. I can work with a non-Christian, someone who don't believe in God at all. All I ask them to do is to treat everyone justly and fairly. The greatest tenet in my faith is love, love for one another. And I believe that's one of the greatest tenets in your faith as well, is to love your brother and sister as yourself. So as the sheriff, I would practice that daily.
Yes. Thank you so much, Eric, for that. And yes, I do believe that all faiths teach love and compassion and justice. And I think we can all work together as justice seekers. And that's what our community and everybody in our country needs to focus on. Our faith does drive us to work for compassionate change. And thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate that you came on, and we at Minaret Foundation are happy to be hosting these Q&As for all the candidates, Republicans and Democrats. And it's very important for us to know where our candidates stand on these key issues that we talked about and we discussed. Minaret Foundation is a nonprofit organization that works with all sides, and we love talking to everyone. And I just want to remind you all that early voting starts next week on October 13th. So please go and vote, start early vote if you can. Go vote on November 3rd, but the lines will probably be longer. So go vote your voice. It's important right now. The state of our country is in our hands, and we can be those voices for ourselves and for people that maybe cannot vote. So vote for who you believe in. And we at Minaret Foundation love working with everyone. And you can visit us at www.minaretfoundation.com, and you can look up all of our candidates that we've had candidate forums with. And we at Minaret Foundation, just a reminder, I know I said it before, but our focus is to lift the American Muslim voices for sustainable change through multi-faith and civic engagement. And that is what we are doing. And today we were joined by Eric Fagan, who is running for Fort Bend County Sheriff. And thank you for being so generous with your time, Eric, and God bless everyone.
Thank you.